our podcast fans. It's Kayla Hittmeyer. You are back with us listening to Land of Lincoln Credit Union's Bank of Learning More. We are in episode, I know you told me, Katie. 8. Oh my goodness.
I know.
We're just cooking right along. It's episode 8. That voice, that lovely voice you heard there is my co-host, Katie. Hi, Katie.
Hello, friends.
Tell them who you are again.
Well, I'm still Katie. I'm Katie Zaloga. I am the marketing coordinator here at Land of Lincoln.
Oh, that just doesn't suit her, that name, marketing coordinator, because she's really basically the pick up everything Kayla drops the ball on person.
Not true.
Anyway, we're here today. We have a very special guest with us, Tim French. Tim, introduce yourself.
I am Tim. I manage the Solution Center. So anytime you are calling, chatting, or emailing Land of Lincoln, you're going to be speaking to myself or one of my great team.
Yes, you guys work so hard down there. It's just crazy. I was just counting up, and we had a post that I threw on Facebook, and if you haven't seen it, go look, because it shows kind of their dwelling at our basement in Oakland. But we were counting up how the number of calls that you guys take. I know I'm getting off track, but I just got to throw some kudos to you guys, because tell them, like, how many calls in a month?
In a month is normally around 10 to 11,000 calls.
Oh my goodness. And then I counted up the chats, and last year alone it was almost 10,000 chats. That's just crazy.
Yeah.
That's just crazy. So thank you to you guys for always being readily available to our members. But today we're going to talk, the title of our episode is Thrifty by 30. Katie is our little resident millennial, and she's quickly encroaching upon that big 30.
Yes.
When is it coming?
In November.
Oh my
About
goodness.
6 months away, I think.
Girl, you are leaving these 20s behind.
I'm okay with that.
I was
honestly.
too. By then I was too. But you got to talking about a good topic that I think not a lot of people think about, but it's like, you look at those milestone birthdays and you're like, where should I be, like, financially? What should I be doing, And you're starting, obviously, to think about, well, you've been thinking about it and looking at that portfolio, per se, and you were like, God, there's just things that I think people need to be thinking about that maybe we push this out there to those younger, the Gen Zs and the millennials, and say, okay, be thinking about this. So I'm really going to let you take the driver's seat today, my friend, and ask Tim and I, because, we're not in our 30s anymore. What? We're a little bit over the 30 mark, so
Slightly.
just ever so slightly. So we feel like, between Tim, who's one of our certified financial counselors here.
I was going to plug that later if you didn't.
Yes, and helps with that. And then just between that and our old age wisdom, right?
Absolutely.
Life experience.
That's a much more diplomatic way to put it. We're going to try to answer some of those questions and hope we can help. Because, we were talking about consumer ed in high school. It's not the same anymore.
No, not at all.
Like when Tim and I were in high school, they literally did show you how to balance a checkbook.
See, we may have learned that, but I probably didn't take it seriously at the time.
Right,
if we did, but
right.
I don't remember it.
No, my son's in the thick of it, and I asked him the other day what a check was, and he said it's what they bring you at the end of dinner.
He's not wrong.
He's not, but they just don't think of it. They think of debits, and they don't write checks, and they haven't had that experience.
Yeah.
So we're going to use this as a kind of a quick little consumer ed for those just getting out of high school to be thinking about as they march on towards that 30th birthday. So Katie, take it away, Toots.
All right, well, I'm going to start off with a bit of a basic here, because I know for us it might seem like common sense. Your savings is for your savings. Your checking is for your payments. So can you give like a basic rundown of how you can maybe manage your accounts and how you can utilize them?
Probably the best thing you can do for your accounts is to make sure you have online banking access, just so you can check daily, weekly, to see what's came in the account, what's gone out of the account, see if there's anything suspicious out there. And while checkbooks are not as common as they used to be, you can get apps on your phone that basically act the same. I use a checkbook register app on my phone, and I will put anything I use in there. My wife uses her debit card, so I can keep it balanced, because the last thing you ever want to do is forget that you have a bill coming out that sat out there pending for a few days. And then all of a sudden you have fees because you didn't remember that you paid your electric bill and that it posted for 3 days.
Yeah.
So you can get that app from any one of the app stores on your phone, on your tablet, and then you just compare and contrast your online banking whenever you'd like. I do it daily myself, but not everyone needs to.
Yeah, and I think, I don't want anybody out there to feel like considering that my son doesn't know what a check was, I want to be very basic in like explaining and not making anybody out there feel like there's a dumb question here, because some just don't know. Yeah. And so I do want to elaborate upon what Tim said and say, there's a savings account, which is just putting money in and keeping it for you and maintaining it. Sometimes with credit unions, they're just share accounts. That's what they're called, that you may see. But a savings account is just where you can keep your money in there. A lot of them are interest bearing, although it's not paying a ton of interest right now. But at least as that stays there, interest bearing means it'll earn you some money if it stays in there. Then there's the checking account or the debit account, and that's where you see that you may get a direct deposit paycheck that comes in, and it can go to your checking account, and then you can pay bills out of it. And that is not that's separate from a credit card account. So with this, it's your money input and output. With a credit card, there's money that you're borrowing until you pay it off the next month. So I just wanted to, for those that are listening, maybe the younger audience who haven't had that consumer ed, those are the basic differences there.
Now, with that, if you're thinking about getting older and saving for bigger things and emergency savings, what would you do to maybe help boost your saving goals?
Set up a budget. That's something I've been pushing towards my oldest son, who's just finally got his first checking account, where he gets an allowance from me. He gets birthday money from grandparents. And so we've been talking to him about, we went on a pretty big vacation over their spring break. And so I let him talk to him about it, and he put away half of his allowance every month into a separate account. So he had his normal debit card, which he uses and goes out with friends, but then he had that secondary savings that he would not touch. So that's always a good idea, you can get multiple savings accounts, one for emergencies, one for fun, one for vacation, one for your taxes if you pay taxes on your property and don't escrow. So that's the best way to look at it, is if you look at how much money you have coming in every week or month, and then figure out, okay, if I get $100 this week, I need to put $20 away for this and this and this, and then whatever's left over you put in your checking account or your savings account for your vacation, for your fun money. So that's the biggest way to really make sure your money works for you, is to figure out what you want to do with it and follow your plan.
Yeah, and I would add to that, that's when you get into your 20s and maybe you've gotten your first job and you've got a car payment and you've got rent that's due or a house payment. And those are or maybe you have some credit card debt or a student loan debt that you're just staring at you and glaring at you, and you're like, there's no possible way I can start a savings fund. That's what you hear, I think, a lot from 20-somethings. It's like, I don't have enough. I have to pay bills, Your best thing to think about, your goal by your 30th would be, what I did was try to make sure you do have enough in that savings that if something happened with your employment, you've at least got 3 months' salary while you're looking. And the best way to do that, Tim's talking about the budget, that is key. You need to literally sit down and journal your expenditures. What can you cut? We talked about this before. There's always something. When you start to track and journal your spending, you kind of are like, okay, obviously I didn't need to do that. Obviously I didn't need to do that. Or for that age group too, look at those subscriptions in your phone, whether it's Android or Apple. What's renewing that you used one time? How many streaming services are you getting out there and you really don't need them, you just don't look at them. How can you eliminate that? And then all of a sudden you've got $12 a month that you can put into that savings account. And it just continues to add up. And the good thing, you were talking about the accounts, and I think that's why you made you think of it. You could make it to where your direct deposit that comes into your checking automatically puts some into your savings. You never even see it.
Yes.
Are you doing that?
That's what I do.
Yay.
This is where I was going.
That's
but
perfect.
You just do, it could be 10, 20, $50 even just from your paycheck. You have it go straight to your savings account, maybe a separate one like Tim said. You don't even know that it went away.
Exactly.
It's just there.
That's the key. Yes, sneaky. You trick yourself.
Yeah. Oh, I have all this money, but I'm not going to touch it. So speaking of successful savings, because I know far down the road, none of us in this room are retiring anytime soon. But in your 20s or 30s, should you start saving for retirement?
that's going to be the best time for you to start saving, especially if you are childless, because then you don't have those extra money that you're putting towards daycare.
Right.
When I was in my early 20s, that's when I started putting a very large portion of my paycheck every month into a 401k. This way, it was there, and then when I started having those daycare fees, I was able to, rather than re-budget my regular expenditures, I changed what my 401k was, because I was able to see that by changing it from 10% down to 5%, while less is going into my 401k, it gave me a plan of saying, well, you're still on track to retire at age 65.
Okay.
And so I was able to put a big chunk in then and then change it down. And now that my children are no longer in daycare, I'm starting to ramp that back up without my actual money that I use every month, without that ever have changed.
Yeah, that's great advice. I like that, Tim.
Yeah.
You think when you come out of college and you get that first job, you're like, oh, there's time for that later. But that's a really good point. You don't have all the extra expenditures, or most don't. I mean, they may, like I said, you may have a student loan that's staring at you, but that's a good time to really kind of beef it up. And then when things do get more expensive, I really like that. Yeah. The other thing is that I would throw in there from a professional career standpoint is I talk to more and more age group in that 20 to 30 who they're too shy to negotiate with either a potential employer or their current employer at an appraisal time or something to really negotiate your salary and your worth. I mean, I get it. It's an uncomfortable topic for some, but it's also who else is going to advocate for you besides you. And that can be an area where you can really say, I've done this, show your worth, explain this, and get that little extra. And then when you get that little extra, pretend you didn't get that little extra and actually
Hide
put
it
it
away.
in savings, yes, or at least a portion of it. So that's another key thing to beef up that savings. When you pay something off, pay off a student loan or something you've been paying monthly, immediately start putting that towards savings or a 401k so that down the road, I mean, it's expensive. I have, family in-laws who went into retirement recently, and it's the insurance. I think that gets us every time. That's my speaker. If you don't edit it out, that's my speaker turning on. But that's what gets people is the insurance costs and the things associated with retirement. So Tim's right. Do it early. It's not a set in stone. You can fluctuate it every year around enrollment time with your employer. You can bring it down. You can bring it up. When you're talking about negotiating, talk to them about what their investment in your 401k is. That's another thing that you can say. I really want to know, what are you guys going to match? That's important when you're looking at an employer, because if you're not familiar with it, a lot of employers will match whatever you invest up to a certain point.
Yes.
So those are conversations that you want to have.
Well, along those same lines, because this is a conversation that comes up in my group of friends that always goes over my head, and I just usually leave the conversation and go to another one, is investing in stocks and such. And that's not something we handle at the credit union. Our financial counselors are not financial advisors.
Let's have that disclosure out there.
Yes, we are not giving this advice. But if I wanted to start getting into investing, looking into it, do you guys have advice of where to look?
I mean, if you're looking to do it yourself, there's plenty of threads out, even on Reddit, that can give you some ideas. You need to really be able to factor which ones are the joke meme stocks and which ones are the legitimate ones. I've done some myself through Robinhood with some success. But I don't have the knowledge to really say that I know what I'm doing very well, other than just looking and guessing and reading a few articles here and there. The best way to go is to someone who is a professional. Go to your Charles Schwab. Every town has at least one of those. You can even do a lot of these, like TD Ameritrade, are directly through the website. Most of them you can do it through the phone. Find someone who knows what they're doing so they can get you the most out there. If you're comfortable with kind of doing it yourself, that's not saying you shouldn't. I'm just saying, for myself, I don't have that knowledge, and I don't have the time to research every single thing out there and what are out there. It might grow what might grow. Most of the time when I'm guessing out there, I'm going off of other people's third-party information. And that means I'm coming in at the end. I'm not coming in when the stock's low and jumping high. I'm where it's at the medium area or the high area. So I'm not making a lot off that. So if you can find someone whose job is to spend their day looking at those and doing the research and finding out which market's going to be the best for you, I would really say go ahead and go that way. And then always sort of match with your 401k, because your 401k is going to be a little more long-term safety net.
Yeah, and 401ks really are a form of investing.
Yes.
I mean, it's an investing in the market, and it's just that you don't have to actually keep a close eye on it. It's just a set, ebbs and flows sort of thing. That's why people will say, oh, my 401k really took a hit this year. But that's because it's designed lower risk to take the ebbs and flows, and it may come a point when you get close to retirement and you're like, oh, it's not time yet, because that needs to bounce back up a little bit. But yeah, like Tim said, there's a lot of advisors out there locally, and we can make some suggestions to you. There's some accounts that we have here that actually do a little bit of investing for you, but it's a low risk sort of situation.
Right.
So
not so
you can talk to one of our financial counselors about that. I would suggest also, by the time you're 30, going back to that, by the time you're 30, what should you do? For me, yes, the 401k was very, very important, and you want to make sure that you're doing that 10 to 15. And then one thing I noticed on there, we said that seems like a lot. Mm-hmm. That's counting if the company doesn't match. Okay. So be thinking about that. Maybe it's 5% for you, and there's a 5% match that gets you this.
That's better.
Yes. Not quite so out of pocket. But another thing to look at and to really be thinking about is saving for your kids' college. Because, we know I came out of college with student loans. So many kids are. They're talking about forgiveness and all that, because there's so many people having it. So it's just a nice way to buffer it, to look into something that you set aside a little bit each month, and it grows and it grows, so that by the time, even if you don't even have any kiddos and you just know you're going to, that way you're not hit with that tremendous expenditure later on. So that's something to look at too. And again, financial advisors can help you out with that.
Okay, another not fun topic, insurance. Yeah.
But you gotta have it, right?
Well, some people don't think so.
I know, but
it's not worth the money. I don't need it. I won't use it. I don't get sick.
Are we talking car, medical, home? All of them.
All of it.
I think medical really gets the shaft, because younger ones think they're invincible and they don't need it, and
I like to think that.
They don't go that route. I don't. Any thoughts there, Tim?
I would advise to always make sure you have insurance. I didn't for a while, and I luckily never had anything too terrible come out of it. But as a parent, that insurance has saved my home and life 10 times over at this point.
Yeah.
And all it can take is just one little thing, too. It doesn't even matter if you have kids or not. If you get something as simple as tripping over your dog and breaking your arm, that can cost tens of thousands. At any point in time, you could get, anything can happen, even down to nowadays with COVID over the last few years. If you were to go to the hospital because of COVID, that could bankrupt somebody because of just the cost of medical care to begin with.
Right.
So I would definitely advise medical insurance. I mean, if you have a car, you have to have it.
Right.
And you're going to know if you don't have it, and you're going to regret if you don't have it.
We're kind of rolling our eyes because we're like, you have to have it. But obviously we know there are plenty.
Yeah, it certainly saved me a couple of years ago. With my car, but I'm glad I had it.
Yeah. And then, if you own a house, I have never had to access my home insurance, but I also know how much it would be if that tree in my backyard would fall and smash into my roof. I know exactly how much that would cost me.
Ice damage or anything along those lines.
Anything at all. Insurance, while you look in, if you don't use it, you're wondering why you're spending hundreds of dollars every month. But it's either that or you would spend thousands of dollars at once to get something taken care of.
Yeah, and we can tell you from experience, insurance premiums are tough because you sit there and you're like, oh, I'm paying so much in this premium and I haven't needed to use it. And I can tell you, as you get older, you will use it. It will happen as the things start to break and shift and all that jazz, whether it's your car, your home, or your body, you're going to use it. Yeah. But the key here is we've seen enough people who didn't, and then something happens, and now they're in literal financial
Yes.
dire straits because they did not do those premiums and pay the premiums insurance to save. That's why it's called insurance. It ensures that you're covered if something happens. So while the premiums are burdensome and you feel like you could be saving that, it's going to be in the long run much better for you if something happens and now you're filing, like Tim said, filing bankruptcy. Or we have so many people who come to us and they just can't get out of medical debt, or they can't get out of, they've gotten in an accident and they have to figure out, how do I pay this down? Which is a whole other topic we can talk on in a different podcast of what you do when you have those mounting debts and things like that. But I would say if you're in your 20s and it is just expensive, shop them. Get your car insurance, but do not feel like once you settle with one insurance broker that you have to stay with them for the next 10, 20 years.
Yes.
We shop it every year. Send those emails out to the different areas. Get a policy. They want your business, so people will a lot of times beat them. So take the time to just, a lot of them you can just send an email. Be like, send me back a quote. I need something. So whether it's car or home, depending on where you're getting employed, you probably have medical or HSA options. Make sure you're talking to your employer and their HR departments about that. If they're not offering things like that, there are a lot of brokers who can offer that to you. And again, shop it every year with the open enrollment time. So, but our financial counselors can help you get the resources for those things.
And speaking of financial counselors, this next question is great for Tim. What is a credit score?
The credit score is what is looked at as what your worthiness of being able to borrow money. It's going to look at multiple factors to see if you are a high-risk person to give money to, if you're more likely to pay it back on time factors in. And then if you are a low risk, are you someone that they're going to basically look at as a friend? You have that one friend that if you let them borrow something, they're bringing it back tomorrow clean, and if it's a car, it's full of gas. But then you also have that one guy that if you lend him something, it's gone. You might as well just go buy a new one the next day. And
that's a good way to look at it, yeah.
And that's how lenders look at
credit
people
scores
as well. I mean, no one wants to be judged as a number. You want to be judged as a person, but we have to look at someone through a filter, and the credit score is what that filter is. How do you handle your money?
And what kind of things affect it?
The biggest thing that's going to affect it is, do you make your payments on time?
Okay.
And do you make those payments consistently?
So a lot of people think it's having like too many credit cards or something like that, but really it's just, even if you have several credits, just pay it on time.
If you pay it on time, and then the second thing is, what is your balance at?
Okay.
If you keep your balance low, even if you have 50 credit cards and you keep all of them down, either paid off every month or down below 25%, that's going to help your credit score out the most. But the biggest part is always going to make your payments, even if it's just the minimum payment. Nobody wants to live solely on credit cards, but if that's what you have to do, if you can at least make those payments every month, that's going to look better than you making one huge payment on credit card A, but the other 4 you don't make at all. That's not going to help you at all.
And you can, sometimes they'll tell you not to check it too often because it can affect your credit when you pull it. That's that's what they call a hard pull. We have in a lot of places do, but in the Land of Lincoln Credit Union app, we have a Savvy Money that checks your credit score for you, and it's a soft pull. So what that means is it may not be absolutely exactly the same as if somebody did a hard pull for you, but it's going to be pretty darn close that you have an idea, and it doesn't impact your credit score at all. So you can log on and do that. You can see it every day as it kind of moves around and stuff, and you can keep an eye on it. And our counselors here are equipped to be able to help you improve that score and advise you on things that you can do to make it get better, so that you can maybe, especially in a housing market right now, if you're approaching 30 and you're looking to buy a home, it's a seller's market, which means you need to be pre-approved.
Yes.
You need to be ready, or you're not going to get a seat at the table, so to speak. So keeping an eye on your credit score and making sure it's better will help you with that.
So say you've not gotten credit cards, loans, anything, you don't have really a credit score at all yet.
But we run into that too.
Yes, definitely.
What would you recommend to start building your credit?
Probably the easiest thing that you can always do, and if you come into any Land Lincoln branch, is you can do a shared secure card. That's going to be something where you can put something as little as $250 down, and you'll get a actual Visa credit card. But rather than going off of your credit worthiness, it's your own money. So it's a zero risk for you. It's zero risk for the credit union because it's your money. And this way you can start building up that payment history. And so once you start showing that you're good with the money, you can graduate yourself to a traditional credit card. And you get a little bit of a credit score, get an auto loan. Just sort of build yourself bottom to top. A lot of people make the mistake and they just jump into every credit card offer that comes in their email. Every time they go to the store, they're offered, hey, do you want to get $25 gift card today by getting your Walmart card? I mean, you can do that. There's nothing wrong with doing that, especially if you are smart about it and find one that's going to be cash back at Sam's or Walmart. Sam's, a lot of times, they'll be like, hey, you get a free membership for a year. Well, use that if that's what's going to be best for your life. But just find the credit card that's best for you. But using the credit card from the credit union, not only are you going to be able to have one that's local if you have questions, but you're going to be able to talk to a financial counselor too if you ever have questions on what the best goal is for you and how to achieve that. You'll have that direct person too.
Yeah, that's a really great point. So going that route is not the temptation of having a credit card where you can start charging it up. And I think if you do get, though, a credit card, maybe you decide to get it like an Amazon card. Sometimes a lot of them will do the Amazon Visa because they realize that they're purchasing on Amazon a lot. You may as well get the rewards that come with it because you can pay things off or whatever. The key is to still include those purchases in your budget and be cognizant of what you're spending, and if you can, pay it off each month just like it's another bill, and don't allow that balance to continue to roll over. And not just the mistake that young individuals make before they get older into their 30s and 40s and maybe have a little more disposable income also is thinking, I can just pay it off later, or I could pay a minimum balance. Yeah. The minimum balance is barely covering the interest that's being charged on a lot of these cards. So you really don't want to get in that habit. You want to start the habit of any kind of credit that you have, you can pay it off each month. So be accountable for it. A lot of people won't journal things like that or put it in their budget, but you want to make sure that you're aware because it'll just help you to keep a track of it.
Leading into my next question, you got your credit score built up, you've got some loans, you got credit cards, maybe mortgage, auto loan, you've got a lot. How do you prioritize your different debts?
What I personally do is I go through and I am a spreadsheet person. I've got a spreadsheet for my budget, and then down at the bottom it has my balances of the credit cards we have and the loans I have. And then I'll prioritize the one with, if I'm not able to pay them all off every month, is I'll prioritize the one that has the highest interest rate. So if I can get the one with the highest interest rate and the lowest balance paid off first, then I can snowball to the next and to the next. And then if I can start putting a little bit more on my auto loan or my home loan, and so I can get a little bit of that paid off faster. My home loan, when I'm making my monthly payment, it says, hey, if you pay an extra $10 a month in principal, you'll pay it off a year and 7 months early.
Oh, wow.
And so, and there's plenty of financial calculators. Any financial counselor or Land Lincoln can direct you to that as well. That'll give you the best ideas, but the best thing to always do is prioritize that card that has the highest interest rate. And those store cards are going to be the ones that have the highest interest rate.
Yeah. It's crazy.
So that's what I personally do, is make sure that I get the highest interest one done first.
Yes.
And then that goes to the next and next until I don't have anything but utility bills.
Yeah, that's great. I that's the same advice that I would give. I'll even add a little bit further though and say we have plenty of people who come to us and say, I can barely pay one bill. So what do? Well, I take it down to your basic needs. You need power. You need water.
Yeah.
You need those things to survive. So you need to make sure that you budget so that you can cover your utilities. Then and then your next level would be pay off those things that have the highest interest as quickly as possible, because it's basically handing them money that's not going towards your debt at all. So you want to be paying twice, 3 times if you can what that minimum payment is, that you can get down. The next thing I would say is don't avoid your creditors. Most of these places, if you're communicating with them, will work with you. Especially, let's say you did have a medical emergency. Even if you have insurance, sometimes the cost is just still out there.
Mm-hmm.
Right. A lot of places, like if you have like an ER visit or something along those lines, if you talk to them in their billing department, a lot of times they'll work a payment plan for you that's interest-free. Sometimes for 2 years. They'll give you interest-free for 24 months, as long as you commit to a regular payment, they're going to work with you. It's the ones that avoid those collection agencies or those places that get into a pickle, because they won't let it just sit there. If they don't hear from you, they'll turn it over. If they hear from you and you're making an effort, usually there's going to be a lot of leeway, especially coming out of a pandemic. There's a lot of places that are offering a lot of grace because of this situation. So my advice there, along with Tim's pay the highest interest things first, is talk to your creditors. Even here with us, if someone's default on an auto loan or something, we're going to work with them, because our goal is to get the loan paid back. Yeah, we don't want it default.
No.
So if you talk to your creditors, they'll find ways. Maybe they'll adjust your payment. Maybe they'll, give you a grace period, and then we get to this and commit to something. A lot of them will work with you. So don't avoid them. Don't hang up on them when they call your phone.
Just talk to them. They're nice.
Don't
They're
click
people
ignore.
too.
Yes.
They're nice people. Well, that sums up my specific questions.
Right.
But if either of you have any advice for those of us who are building their careers, getting their homes, expanding their families, what would you like to say to those in their 20s, 30s?
Kids are expensive.
Kids are very, very expensive.
Just kidding.
And even after they're out of daycare, that's when the sports fees come in. All the other fees come in, but it's always worth it. And really the best advice for anyone at any age, not even 20s to 30s, figure out what your goal is. Is your goal to buy a house? Work with someone to figure out how you can get not only your budget there, but your credit there. Do you want to buy a brand new Tesla? How are you going to get to that? It's not so much, don't buy a brand new car because you want a new toy.
Yeah.
That's going to be the big thing. And a lot of people that are just joining the workforce, they see the people that are established. They've had their job for 20, 30 years, and so they're coming in with a brand new vehicle every year or two. But they've also built up their credit and their savings, and they can afford those things. So just because you see everyone else has a brand new toy, just like with a kid,
that's a hard one.
you don't always need the brand new nicest thing out there. Figure out, and if you do want that brand new top of the line BMW, make that your goal.
Right.
How can I afford this without messing up the rest of my budget? And how can I get my credit to where my interest rate is going to be low?
Yeah.
And just go from there. Figure out what your goal
saving
is.
up prior so your payments are smaller too.
Absolutely. And if you can go in with a decent down payment, that makes everyone happy.
Yeah. Yep. All great stuff. I think I would also say, Katie, you both have mentioned the emergency savings. It is just so key. To try to find, even if it's $5 a month, it's going to start to add up. And if you just make sure that you start to put that in there for that rainy day, because almost everyone will come across a period of time where they're short on funds, and it's just good to have that to tap into when you need it. Some more specific advice I would give based off my own experiences: skip the expensive wedding, elope on a beach. I remember how much we spent on our wedding, and I thought that is a down payment on a house that could have gotten me equity, and that's another thing to think about. Purchasing a home and not throwing it into rent where you're building no personal equity. Try to get yourself out of the situation of paying rent and things like that, and into investing in your own home. That gets you that equity, that all of that ends up helping you in the long run. And then I mentioned earlier negotiating salary. I really can't drive that home enough. And I know as soon as we get done here, Katie's going to be talking to me about it. I can see it in
The
her
mics
eyeballs.
turn off.
She's
Give me
like,
more money.
she's like, remember what you said?
It's coming.
But it is super important. Make sure that you're advocating for yourself. There should not be a single employer out there who begrudges someone for making sure they're advocating for their fair pay. That's the key, though. It needs to be fair.
Yes.
It needs to be based off of what you can prove your worth, and you've documented, I've done this, I've added these duties, I've added this. I've looked in the market, I know what I can make if I go here, and advocate for yourself to make sure that you are, get those little bumps, and that's what can help you get out of debt quicker. So those are my key advice.
Well, I feel smarter. And like life's maybe not as hard and overwhelming as it seems sometimes.
It's tough. I mean, financial conversations, and if you're getting ready to get married, you've got a significant other, it's the leading cause of divorce still, and it has been for a very, very, very long time. Financial situations. Yeah. There's conversations, and our financial counselors can help with that, but there's conversations that you can have prior to going into that really help you get on the same page about how will you be spending, what's going to be your priority for saving and paying things off, and what kind of debt is coming from both of you. And being very upfront can help you avoid a lot of those arguments. Are you going to have issues and bad times? Absolutely. But if you know each other's philosophies, it's going to make those conversations a lot easier. So that's my advice there from a couple standpoint.
Thank you both
This is great,
for
Katie.
putting up with my questions.
It was a good
This
topic.
fun.
Yep.
Well, that's fun.
Thanks,
Thank
Tim.
you.
Yeah.
Thanks for having me.
All right. Well, Katie, thanks for driving this ship for us today. And thanks to all of our listeners out there for tuning in again with us. We hope that you found this information to be helpful. And we've got another couple of episodes before the season's done? One more. Ooh,
Yeah.
the season finale. And that's going to be a fun one. Yeah. So make sure you tune in next Monday because we have some fun stuff coming your way on that one. So thank you guys all for listening today. From Land of Lincoln Credit Union, we want you to bank on learning more.